our Singapore context, I know parents are so stressed out with the child's education. Parents are so stressed out with parenting. Not that they don't care about their children, they care a lot, but sometimes they are at the loss what to do with the children. Right? And they've been sending the children for courses, for workshops, and sending them for enrichment classes and so on. Right? So these are, it all shows that the parents care. Right? And you're spending so much time and so much money on your child's education. Right? And also because of our education system is very, very competitive. Right? And Singapore's education system has been successful, has been very, very competitive, that it has been labeled as an overheated pressure cooker. Right? Being a child grew up, I'm authentically Singaporean. Right? I born in 65, I'm authentically SG50. Yeah, so in my growing up, I know how stressful it is. I've gone through the Singapore education system. It's so stressful. Right? And sometimes it's so helpless as a parent. You don't want your child to lose out. So it goes on and on, right? So I know the very typical lifestyle of a child. You wake up early in the morning, you go to the school. After school, you got to go for tuition class or enrichment classes. Right? And then Sunday, you come to Buddhist library, still Dharma class. Right? So classes after classes, right? All behind, we want you to be good. We don't want you to lose out, right? So the education system in Singapore is labeled as overheated pressure cooker, right? So by sending your child, right, sending your child to school, sending your child to tuition center, signing up for enrichment class, signing them out for workshop, what do you hope to see in your child? Let's be very realistic, right? Singaporeans are very practical. You work so hard. Those are your hard-earned money. So that's your investment. What do you hope to see in return? No? Let's really think about it. Spend a little bit of time, 1 minute. What do you hope to see in your child by all this investment you put into your child's education? What do you hope to see in them? Can I have some feedback from you? It's you. This talk is for you. Yep. Okay, we want them to be successful. Okay. How do you measure your child's success? What? Earn more money. Yeah, earn more money, right? So this is how we measure success. It's always in materialistic form, dollars and cents. Yes. Yeah, I believe as a parents, we all want our child to reach tertiary level. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. So, but I think something is very lacking, and how should I place it? The problem with the whole society, even up to the policymakers, right? Most of us measure success in terms of dollars and cents. What type of job you are doing, what type of houses you are staying, how much zeros you have in your bank account, right? And then if you say, oh, my child is a lawyer, wow, my child is a scholarship winner, wow. But let's look at Alvin. Do you still remember the case of Alvin? Yeah? What Alvin, you can't remember? There was this law scholarship winner, Alvin. Isn't he successful yet? He put out on the internet. Yeah? And what happened to our Amos? Isn't he a very smart boy? So coming back here, okay, coming back, when we educate our children, right, when you send your child to tuition centers, when you send your child for enrichment classes, what are they teaching your child? Knowledge. Yeah? Knowledge. But bear in mind, knowledge is a double-edged sword. How you make use of your knowledge? How Alvin made use of his knowledge? How Amos made use of his knowledge? Do you hope to see your child growing up to be like them? And what is lacking in there? Yeah? So I'm sure apart from seeing your child reaching the tertiary level, I believe you also hope to see that your child grow up to become a morally upright person. Yeah? But by sending your child to tuition centers and enrichment centers, do they teach them moral? But you hope that your child grow up to be able to respect me, to have this filial piety. But by sending them to tuition centers, do you think the tuition center teach your children this sort of values? Do you think the tuition center teach them character development? Yeah, so this is why I'm trying to bring out that there is something very lacking in our whole education system. Yeah, and there is something very lacking also in the way we conceptualize it. Yes. Yes, the school do provide social education. In fact, there is a drive in our Ministry of Education to focus more on character building, to be more student-centered, to be more value-centered. But again, this is how we teach, because it depends on, it has to deal with the philosophy of education. If your values is measured, how do we measure success is always in numbers. Okay, so I have been to the schools, and then the school do teach them about loving kindness. So okay, to be loving. When I see an old woman came out to the bus, then there's multiple choice. I sit on the chair, or I give my seat to the old woman. Yeah, so multiple choice, the child can tick, 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 tick. But do you think this sort of moral values is to be measured like multiple choice? You can say it, you know it up here, but when you go up to the bus, the child just don't care. So what is lacking is this sort of very contemplative, being able to draw in and be in touch, using your heart to touch, not just on a very intellectual and materialistic level. But the way we assess our assessment system is all based on right and wrong, on paper, 纸上谈兵. Right? So the sort of contemplative element is very lacking. You know it up in your head, but your heart is empty. But mindfulness can close up this gap, bringing your child back to be in touch with yourself and be aware of what is surrounding him and drawing out this resource of love. We all have this. Right? We, as a human being, we have this loving kindness with us. We have this metta, but that reservoir is not open up. Our education system don't open that up. It's all up in the head. Intellectually, we know very well. Yeah? So, by sending your child to the school, it's not exactly education. Right? Because that is only teaching your child skills and knowledge. Right? But as I mentioned just now, you have to bring the child be in touch with himself, right? And then the other thing is the whole education has become a huge business. Just move around the Singapore island and see how many tuition centers there are, how many enrichment centers there are. Right, a huge, right? We measure everything in dollars and cents. So education has sort of become a commodity. right? I send my child here, I send my child there, right? 教育是怎样培养出来的？你必须陪你的孩子。Right? You have to grow with them. You have to learn with them. You have to be with them. Right? My mother is not educated at all, but my mother is my best teacher. One of the very good teaching my mother gave me respect. Just quote an example. My father passed away when I was primary 3. Right? So actually I was brought up by my eldest brother. And then my family sell charcoal business. In the old days, you use charcoal to do your cooking. So that when I was in Sec 2, I still remember very clearly, when I was in Sec 2, there's one evening my brother came back very late. We used to have our dinner at 6:30. By 7:30, my brother is still not back. And as a child, I was very hungry and I was getting very angry and lamenting, and I tell my mother, I want to have my dinner first. Right? I will leave, I finish, then when my brother came back, then he has his dinner. And my mother told me, well, you're hungry, right? Don't you think your brother is also as hungry as you are? And if you're hungry, you're sitting on the sofa watching the TV. And feel for it. Think about it. What is your brother doing now? He's carrying charcoal, delivering the goods, so that we have money for dinner, so that you have money to pay for your school fees. So after my mother said that, from that day onward, I will never have my dinner until my brother comes home. And what my mother is teaching me, respect. That's how I respect my brother. So, but my school teach me respect is all in words, isn't it? 尊敬是要这样子的. So it's all concepts. But right at the point when I made the mistake, my mother told me that. And my mother never scolded me, he just let me feel it. Right, so coming back, what do you mean by education? By education is not just sending your child to school, signing your child up for courses. Right? This, what I call this, your child receive a lot of knowledge. Right? Know how to count, 1 + 1 = 2, 2 × 2 = 4. These are all knowledge. But what about the reflective part? Right? That is very, very important. Right? So this is what happened, whether is it in the East or in the West, the whole education system, right? So more and more educators, they begin to realize that actually our whole education system, we have focused too much on the outer science, outer development such as science and technology, finance, right? So I call these skills and knowledge. We're training our child, because Singapore is very economically driven, we're training our child to become lawyers, to become accountants, financial advisors, Right? Whether how good a citizen you are, ? So because there is a very lack of this inner development. That is how we educate our child to develop heart values, to develop this social and emotional intelligence. So basically, throughout the world, especially in the more affluent country, they realize that actually there is an imbalance in our education system. That now there is a core, right? Especially in the West, that they are looking into more of the inner values. Right? Even in Singapore now, also they are beginning to focus more on character development. So Dalai Lama has made a statement like this. He said, pay attention not only to the cultivation of knowledge, but to the cultivation of qualities of heart. So that at the end of education, not only will you be knowledgeable, but also you will be a warm-hearted and compassionate person. Right? So there is nothing wrong of sending our children, right, to develop, to send them all the way up to tertiary level. We have to do that. I'm not asking you to not to do that. We have to. But on top of that, we also need to focus on the cultivation of the heart. Right? So that you know how to make use of your skills, not to benefit your selfish means, but using your skills to benefit all beings. Right? So that this will become a better place for us to live in. Right? So in the West, right, mindfulness is very, very popular. Right? And then the educators are all embracing mindfulness into the education system. Right? They have this so-called mindful school, right, inner kids program. There are also books being published, right? Mindful teachers and mindful teaching mindfulness. And then Goldie Hawn is a celebrity, and then she set up the Hawn Foundation to do research on mindfulness. And this Susan Kaiser wrote this book about the mindful child. So the academia is also taking it very seriously. Like Oxford University has a mindfulness center set up to do research on mindfulness. Then CK, Stanford University, all right, to do research on compassion, right? And then you have UCLA, right? They have these mindfulness awareness research centers. So there are more and more research centers in the universities they are taking up. So mindfulness is no longer a practice by the monk to gain enlightenment, but there is a science in it, right? And there are also various conferences in the West, right? How to help children, how to help teachers, right? So for the past 2 years, I've been working on this mindfulness and loving kindness in education. So what I find that in the West, they focus a lot on breathing meditations. Breathing meditation has an effect of helping us to calm the mind, to stay focused. But I find that most of the research area or most of the mindfulness programs, the element of loving kindness is lacking. So I developed this program where I put in the element of loving kindness, where this practice really evoke your positive emotions, right? Which is really very, very helpful for young children, especially when they are growing. So the inspiration for this research, right? So when I came back from Taiwan in 1997, I was with Sagaramudra Buddhist Society, and I was heading the Sunday class. So there was one occasion I brought the children out for excursion. We're supposed to see a stamp exhibition, and we reached the place early. So I let the children play in the playground. And you know what happened when children play, right? And then when they get back to the exhibition hall, wow, hyperactive, right? We got a very good tour guide trying to attract their attention, but it was fighting because their mind is too active and he was trying to catch the children's attention. So I seen there, I said, okay, I told the tour guide, I said, can you give me 5 minutes? So I told the children, I said, your mind is just too active, right? And uncle has a hard time with you. So I think you need to calm your mind, right? Let's sit down for 5 minutes and meditate. And because the children has been meditating with me during the Sunday schools, right? In a split of a second, it quiets down. Very fast, it just quiet down. I was shocked. So I told the tour guide, hey, you can take on now, right? And that was a real huge impact on me. I said, how wonderful it is if we could bring this into our mainstream education. It's definitely going to help our children learn better. It's definitely going to help our teachers to teach better, right? So in 2001, I left Singapore. I went to take a Bachelor of Education in Australia, University of Western Australia. So I was sharing this with my lecturer. Nobody understood what I'm saying. Yeah, so that idea was left aside until 2 years ago. I continued and picked it up and did my master research in it, right? So I began to think, what roles does mindfulness and loving kindness play? I find that there is a role. It will help. It will definitely help. But how am I going to say this? I need to say in a scientific language. Right? So I need to do a research. I need to prove. Right? So basically my whole research is I want to find the impact, I want to explore what is the impact, what is the effects of mindfulness on school children, be it academically, character development, social and emotional well-being, etc., etc. So I try to capture the children's emotion and experience when they do mindfulness meditation, especially loving kindness, right? So as I say, there is a science in it. So let's take a look at some of the scientific terms. So this term, emotional intelligence, right? So in the past, we talk a lot about IQ. Then now they develop EQ, right? So that means helping to develop the child's emotional intelligence so that they have this ability to recognize, to understand and manage emotion, especially negative one. Right? They know how to manage it adaptively, right? So that it helps them in their because sometimes if you get too angry, don't know how to manage your emotion, it could disrupt. It could be very destructive, right? So the other thing is our mind is plastic. What do we mean by that? All our organs, right? By adolescent, you reach certain age, you stop growing. Yeah, you stop growing by certain height. Yeah, but in terms of our brain, it's plastic. It will continue to change. It won't stop. In the past, they said stop, but now they realize that our mind is plastic. So there's this term called neuroplasticity. Right? So our mind, the science has proven it shows that the mind itself is plastic. And if the mind is plastic, that means that we need to produce this experience changes in growing child. We need to help the child, right? To mold the brain and structure the brain so that it grows in a very positive way. So let's take a look at the brain, right? So this is called the Turing brain. That is how the brain evolved. Actually, there are three parts of the brain. There are three types of brain in the brain. Right? The first is called the reptile brain. Right? So this is survival mode. Right? You can see, so when you are in a danger, you become 冷血动物, you kill to survive. You don't want to become the people's meat on the death. Right? So you enter into this survival mode. You know, look at the crocodile. Right? It attack before somebody attack. Right? So we have this brain, we all have it, it's behind us, right? This part of the brain. Then this is the center part of brain, known as the limbic brain. It's deal with emotions, right? And then this part is the neocortex, right? So this part deal with analyzing. It's also known as the executive function, how you think, how you analyze, how you plan. Then your information are also retained here. Okay, so now if somebody get very have this anxiety, fear, it falls into this reptile brain. So too much pressure, if you pressure too much, the person just retaliate, right? Attack. That happens to us also when we get angry, right? Right? You don't access to, if you get angry, you fall into this brain, right? You lost your emotions, right? The positive part, right? And then you don't get access to this part of the brain which is called the very high human brain. So you see, when you practice loving kindness meditation, you develop this part, and then you can go and access this part. Right? But when you got too much stress, you fall into here. So that's why the cultivation of meditations becomes very important, especially loving kindness, where you help to develop your positive emotions. Right? So you in your own experience, when you become very fearful, you cannot think very clearly because you can't gain access to this part of the brain. So, but if you use meditation, you calm down, then you begin to access to this part of the brain. Make sense? Make sense? Yeah, so this is what the science has found, that we have these three types of brain. Then within these three types of brain, there are different functions in the brain. So there's this amygdala, right? So it's the part of the brain that detects danger. Okay, so when this amygdala detects danger, it comes to here. It shuts down everything. So now you go into your survival mode. Right, you run for your life. Okay, so when this amygdala get activated, it shuts down all other parts of the brain and divert all energy into survival modes. And during this time, there's these hormones that floods every tissue. It gets very tensed up. Okay. And prefrontal cortex, okay? So this is the new cortex. So this part is known as the prefrontal cortex, okay? So it's the front part of the brain. It plays a very important role in thought and emotional regulations, right? So science has shown, right, research has shown that when it increases the prefrontal cortex, this part, when it increases, this part decreases. Yeah, so that's why it's very, very important. And also, they do find that when people do loving kindness meditation, these parts of the brain get lighted up. And when people are happy, these parts of the brain get lighted up. So there is a correlation. Okay, so when the prefrontal cortex get lighted up, there are some hormones being secreted. When the back part of the brain is the stress hormone, the front parts of the brain is the other way around. It has these hormones, some things like morphine when you take morphine, but this is natural morphine. It doesn't cause you any harm. So when you do loving kindness meditation, you feel very comfortable. Right? So it's because the prefrontal cortex is lighted up and there are certain hormones that floods your body that makes you feel good. Right? So in essence, there's a correlation between the practice of loving kindness and compassion and the prefrontal cortex. Right? So loving kindness meditation will reduce negative aspects and increase the positive aspects. Right? So some people ask, can loving kindness be trained? Especially in the West, you know, the scientists, they are very, very skeptical, right? And they see this as a religious practice, or they see that it is something in your character, in your personality, you are born with it. But they say that no, right? Loving kindness and compassion are skills that can be trained. And since it can be trained, and this loving kindness will shape the brain, right, will affect the development of the brain, we should take every opportunity to provide training for our children, right? To shape the children's brain, to alter it in a positive way, to set the foundation for their learning, for their emotional regulation and social functioning, so that our children know to interact with adults, know how to interact with others, and not just play with the iPhones and the iPad. Yeah. So this is a program I did with schools in Singapore, and so I go to the school twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, and there are 2 sessions in a day. Right, morning 20 minutes before the school starts, and then how come there's no music? There's music. Then evening after recess, they have another 10 minutes with me. So this is recess. They come to the classroom. Morning, they have in the special room. Right? So this is 7 o'clock in the morning. They came in and they do some meditation with me. And there are also some other activities. Like this one, we sit in a circle and say metta to each other. Right? And then each of them are given a logbook for them to record how they feel, what happens. And they love this, right? So I just give them 2 to 3 minutes in the morning to do lying down meditation, and it really helps. And then we do mindful stretching, be aware of the body sensation. And then we do mindful stretch, starfish stretch, right? So children can meditate. In fact, they do better than adults. They can calm down much quicker than adults. Right? Then we do mindful eating, eating KitKat. Yeah. and there are sharing sessions.